All right, today we're going to trace one single, really powerful idea across 1,000 years of history, and that's the idea of a king. We're going to see how it was born, how it was built up into this perfect ideal, and then how it was totally and radically transformed.
So let me ask you, when you think of a king, what's the first thing that pops into your head? A crown, maybe? A scepter? A huge army? For most of us, it's probably a throne. This big, ornate chair, a seat of command where a ruler basically imposes their will on the world. That's our starting point. But what if the ultimate symbol of power wasn't a throne at all?
And right here, this is the central tension of our whole story. You've got the throne on one side. It's all about worldly authority, command, and control. And on the other side, the cross, an instrument of torture and execution. Our journey today is to figure out how, in the Judeo-Christian story, the ultimate picture of kingship moved from one of these to the other.
To really get this shift, we have to go way back. We're starting in ancient Israel, around 1200 BC. Back then, it was just a collection of different tribes kind of living in this loose and honestly pretty chaotic setup. They didn't have a single leader, and they were really starting to feel the need for one.
So for over a century, Israel was led by these temporary leaders called judges. They just kind of pop up whenever there was a crisis. But the people got sick of the instability. They looked around at their neighbors who all had kings, and they said, hey, we want one of those. So the prophet Samuel, a bit reluctantly, anoints a guy named Saul. But his reign, well, it was a disaster, and it left the nation divided and looking for a leader all over again.
And that brings us to the man who would become the blueprint for what a king should be, the one everyone else would be measured against, David, a young shepherd from Bethlehem.
You see, after Saul's death, the kingdom was fractured, totally broken apart. But then this pivotal moment happens at a place called Hebron. The northern tribes come to David, they pledge their loyalty, and for the very first time, all 12 tribes of Israel are united under one king.
And this is where a really, really important word enters our story. When they made him king, they performed this sacred ritual. They anointed him with oil, and that single act gave him his title. The Hebrew word for the anointed one is Messiah. Now this is so key. Messiah wasn't just some mystical title. It was a job description. It meant you were chosen, set apart by God for a very special purpose.
So what was that purpose? God gives David his mission statement, straight up. It wasn't, go conquer my enemies or build a massive empire. No, it was, you will be the shepherd of my people. So the ideal king, right from the start, wasn't supposed to be a warlord. He was supposed to be a unifier, a protector, basically a pastor for his flock.
So with David as king, this ideal starts to take shape, and it gets physically centered in one specific place, the city of Jerusalem, which David conquered and made his capital.
You can just feel the emotion tied to this city in the ancient Psalms. This line, it captures that deep joy of a pilgrimage, of traveling sometimes for weeks just to get to the spiritual and political heart of the nation. Jerusalem became so much more than a city. It became an idea.
Jerusalem basically became the symbol of this hope. It was the center for unity, for worship, for justice. It was the home of the throne of the house of David. But, as David's successors often failed to live up to that whole shepherd ideal, the city also became the focus of this powerful hope that one day, a future king from David's line would finally come and get it right.
Okay, let's jump forward 1,000 years. A man arrives in Jerusalem. He's a descendant of David. A lot of people are whispering that he just might be the long-awaited Messiah. But when he is finally enthroned, he completely shatters every single expectation of what that's supposed to mean.
He's crucified and standing at the foot of the cross. The religious leaders start mocking him. Their logic is simple, right? If you really are the Messiah, the chosen one, then use your power. Prove it. Save yourself.
Then the Roman soldiers, the occupying army, they join in too. For them, a king is a political figure, a military leader who commands armies. This guy, bleeding and nailed to a piece of wood, he's a joke. And their challenge is exactly the same. A real king would save himself.
And finally, even one of the criminals being crucified right next to him chimes in. For him, a Messiah should be a miracle worker, Someone who can get them all out of this horrible mess. It's a universal demand, a chorus coming from every corner of society. Show your power. Save yourself.
So, how does this supposed king respond to this universal demand to show his power in a way the world can actually understand? He doesn't.
Instead, he completely redefines what power even is.
The entire world is screaming, "Save yourself!" But his response just flips their logic completely on its head. Instead of saving himself, he's praying for the forgiveness of the very people executing him. Instead of some miraculous escape, he offers a promise of paradise to a dying thief. He doesn't wield power, he gives mercy.
And in that moment, one person finally gets it. The other criminal, the one they call the good thief, he sees something nobody else does. He doesn't ask to be saved from the cross, he asks to be remembered in the kingdom. He is the very first person to recognize that this kingship isn't about earthly rule at all. It's about something else entirely.
This radical redefinition of kingship, from self-preservation to self-sacrifice, was so profound that early Christian writers saw it as a principle that governed not just people, but the entire cosmos. Early Christian writings, like this passage from the letter to the Colossians, describe this crucified king in just staggering terms. He's not just a king of some nation on earth, he's the very image of God, the organizing principle of all creation. The big takeaway is that everything you can see and everything you can't was created through him and for him.
And this brings us right to the ultimate paradox. The source of his cosmic authority, the one act that supposedly brings peace to all things, it isn't a show of force. It's the blood of his cross. His power isn't shown by avoiding suffering, but by entering right into it and transforming it into an act of universal peace.
So we're left with this. Over 1,000 years, the ideal of a king evolves from a shepherd providing security to a crucified man whose power lies in mercy and forgiveness. It's a complete reversal of what we'd normally expect. And it leaves us with one last question to think about. If a king's greatest act is forgiveness, what does that tell us about what true leadership really is?